Hey everybody, for this brief video review for the third Socrative, I wanted to go over a couple of things that we've talked about in the past and talk about some new things as well. So first thing, if you are dealing with project deliverables, remember a project deliverable is something that you would actually give to your client during the process of designing something. So you might give them sketches to show them what your ideas are. You might have some comprehensive sketches, something that develops over time. You might show them some work in progress, but deliverables are the things that you actually give them. It wouldn't be things like final expenses or scope creep. Scope creep, on the other hand, if you ever encounter that term, has to do with poor project management. And talking about scope creep, it would be something like if we didn't exactly clarify what was expected as a product, and so we might have said, okay, we want to create a billboard, but we didn't know what the size of the billboard was. So you made a design that was too small, and so when it was made bigger, it was blurry, or something to that effect. Or maybe you didn't set a clear deadline. So that would be scope creep. What's being created and what time you have to create it in should be something that's clarified right in the beginning. Okay, so then the other thing we want to talk about really quick is the types of fair use and copyright, stuff like that. So just as a review, fair use is when you are allowed to use a image that somebody else created for some sort of use, like education, where it's not something that's for any kind of monetary gain or that detracts or competes with the person's intents who created it. So obviously that's a big thing with the music industry. If somebody samples somebody else's music, they either usually have to pay royalties or they have to have clearance from the original person. Derivative works has to do with changing something that somebody else has created and creating something that's derivative of that. And so when you're talking about that, it might be something that somebody's given permission for their work to be used in that way. Public domain is when a copyright has expired. It has gotten to the point where it's been so long since that person created that thing, and it's become so widely known and widely used that there is no, the copyright has expired, and the public can use it however they want to. And open source is when you have, when anybody can edit and improve something that's already been provided. And most of the time when you hear about open source, you hear about it with respect to things like programming, like coding and stuff like that. Somebody can use somebody else's code and add to it. The source code is open to editing. And so then the other thing I want to talk about is bleed. And when you create a file, when you create a new file, I should say, that's one of the options that's already on there. It actually, in Illustrator, it allows you to build an artboard with bleed built in. It's taking mine a little bit long because I have a lot open. Sorry about that, guys. So if I go in, I can specify how much bleed I want. So if I want to make this bleed 20 point, and I click create, give it a second. Wow, okay, this is a little bit slow. There we go. You can see my artboard here has a red line around it, and that's so that I can put my background image all the way out to that. So if I print and I cut it just a little bit too wide, it still has background to print. So it won't leave a white line or anything like that. So that's bleed. Another thing that you need to know is you need to know what's on the view menu. And so if you go to view, you'll see we have access to the rulers here. so I can show rulers. You go View, Rulers, Show Rulers. And you can also change units of measure by right-clicking on the ruler. So I can change it to inches if I like. And you can also create guides by clicking and dragging from the rulers. And so you guys should know that from Photoshop it's very similar, except it's View, Rulers, Show or Hide Rulers is how you access that. Instead of View Rulers, it's View Rulers, Show Rulers. A little extra, but hey. Alright, so another thing you need to know, obviously you need to have permission to use an image most of the time, and especially if you have a copyright, if it's something that you see on the internet and you know for sure that somebody else created it and it doesn't specify whether it can be used again or used for some sort of monetary kind of gain, you need to ask for permission first, and sometimes you might have to pay what's called a royalty, where any time it's used, you pay a certain amount to be allowed to use it. Alright, so when you're creating a logo, in Illustrator, we're working mainly with vectors, which allows you to resize things and not lose quality. So if you wanted to create a logo, it's best to use a vector because then you can blow it up really big and it doesn't lose quality. You could put it on the side of a blimp or on a billboard, or you can put it on something as small as a postcard, t-shirt, something like that. Alright, so if I've created something, and I'll just use this, and I'm going to just kind of review the Pathfinder real quick. Pathfinder allows you to take two objects and combine them, or subtract one from the other, or you can do any of these other things like intersect, where it picks the things where the area where the two things overlap. I'm going to just join it together, and we're going to call this, we're going to make this a graphic symbol. But to make a graphic symbol, you have to select it first, and you go to the Symbols panel, which is this. If you don't see the little club here, then you have to go to Window, Symbols. Anything you see in panels is going to be under here, just like with Photoshop. So once you have that, I can take this and I can click the new symbol. Anytime you see that little piece of paper icon, it means new on whatever panel you're using. And a big thing is we don't necessarily need a movie clip, so I want to change it to graphic. And when I click OK, it will now appear up here. And right now this is a regular object. If I double click it, or if I bring another instance of it down here. I'll do that first. And then I go to Object, Expand. Then it allows me to go ahead and edit the points on here. So anyways, that is how symbols work. Symbols essentially are just ways to store some sort of graphic for use, multiple use, whatever you need to use it for. And if I change this, it'll say any changes to this will be applied to all instances. Watch what happens. So if I use this direct select tool and then click back out of here, now when I bring the symbol in, you'll notice the symbol has changed to match that. So you can do that to create, like if you create a logo and you want to have different variations on it, you could have it as a symbol in here, edit the original instance after expanding your original. When I expanded it, I made it so it's not a symbol anymore. Alright, so anyways, that's symbols. If I go down to the next question that you guys are going to probably encounter, it talks about something called Gestalt, which I'm going to actually show you something else with this too, because I think it kind of applies to some degree. Normally, let me change this. I'm going to do a image trace. So we haven't really discussed it in great length, but an image trace allows you to basically take something that's a raster graphic, like a bitmap, a JPEG, something like that, and change it into something that is a raster graphic. So right now I did image trace, but in order to turn it completely into a vector graphic, I need to make sure that I hit the expand button. I want to ignore white on this too, so I just did that. And I'm going to hit expand. And there we go. You can see now each one of these things is a separate graphic. So anyways, if I go to, if I look at what the word here says, it says Gestalt when you look at it, but each one of these things as an individual object is meaningless. It doesn't have meaning until it's viewed as a whole. So when you're talking about the Gestalt principle, you're talking about looking at the whole as opposed to the individual pieces. So the Gestalt principle states that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So if we're looking at any of these different things, if you look at it as an individual thing, or if you look at an individual letter, it's meaningless until it's put together with the other letters. And when you're talking about design principles in relation to Gestalt, you might talk about figure ground, where you have two different things going on within an image. So this A here also has something that looks like a tree or an arrow that's formed by the negative space that's surrounding the A, or you could look at it as it's the positive space that is created by the tree. If we were to have this as a closed shape, we might look at it as an individual tree instead of both as an A and as that. So anyways, that's figuring ground. And so yeah, that's there. You'll see that there are lots of different things that we'll encounter as far as principles go moving forward. Similarity, you might use that to create unity. You might have certain things that all have the same color. And then you have something that's not the same color in order to make it a focal point. And so that's what I want to cover with that. The last thing I want to talk about is viewing modes, and what Illustrator allows you to do is see the colors as they'd be printed, even though you're viewing it on a screen. And so it tries to simulate that, and that's how you would, what you would do is what's called a proof. So if I wanted to do a proof, what I'd need to do is go to the view, and then I'd go to proof setup. And then I might choose, if I wanted to choose working CMYK, I'd do that right up there. Boom. Alright, that's it. After you finish the quiz, if you haven't already, make sure that you are working on your geometrics. Actually, since you guys are my Digital 2 or Digital 3, you might have already done your geometrics, but if you have any time left in the period, just keep going with it. Alright, have a good day.